evidence against this, even were someone to seriously mention that possibility. Parentheses. I should note parenthetically that if I'm right about this, contextualist responses to skepticism are misguided. But that's a story for another occasion. Okay. So if the argument up to this point is correct, closure can provide no help to the academic skeptic in pursuit of an argument for global skepticism, because either the correct depiction of epistemic priority between M and not SK is displayed by path 1 or path 2, and in that case the conclusion of the argument will have been reached without employing closure, or the skeptic is simply wrong in thinking that path 3 correctly depicts the epistemic priority, because there cannot be a reason for thinking that SK is true. Let me skip a little bit and move on to easy knowledge. The connection between easy knowledge and skepticism will most of us, I think, see it, but it'll emerge. Kohn imagines what I call an epistemist. I actually, from Claudio's comments, I didn't do this. Lair did it, so what Lair calls an epistemist, a person who claims that we have knowledge, arguing that we know we're not brains in a vat by employing what I have called path 1 as follows. If I know the table is red, then it follows by closure. This is a quote on page 3. By closure, for example, that I know I'm not a brain in a vat being deceived into believing the table is red. Now, some proponents of evidentialism openly embrace this as a way of responding to the skeptical argument that relies on the closure principle. They concede that I cannot come to know I'm not a brain in a vat being deceived into thinking the table is red by inferring it from the table looks red, but I can come to know the table is red on the basis of its looking red. And once I know the table is red, I can infer and thereby come to know that I'm not a brain in a vat being deceived into thinking that the table is red. And then in addition, he goes on. For example, if I know the table is red on the basis of its looking red, then it follows by the closure principle that I can know that it's not the case the table is white, but illuminated by red lights. Presumably, I cannot know that it's not the case that the table is white illuminated by red lights on the basis of the table's looking red. So the evidential foundationalist will have to treat this case analogously to the case of global deception. So if it doesn't work, the point is there's a similar way in which to respond to local kinds of skepticism and global kinds of skepticism, and what I was going to show is it doesn't work with regard to the local case. As he concludes, but it seems very implausible that I could in this way come to know I'm not seeing a white table illuminated by red lights. The issue is whether we can come to know, or at least be in a position to come to know, that the table is not white illuminated by a red light in this fashion. Now, it might be thought that this issue is equivalent to whether the belief that the table is not white illuminated by a red light can be doxastically justified by the table's looking red through an intermediary doxastically justified belief that the table is red. And I think those two issues are not equivalent, and keeping them distinct will help dissolve the problem of too easily obtained knowledge. This next sentence doesn't belong there. It belongs in the next paragraph. I want to blame the formatting, but I think it was the formatter. So don't read that next sentence yet. I'll tell you when to read it. From T, the table is red. I cannot infer, this is me talking now. Of course, it's been me talking for a while. From T, the table is red. I cannot infer anything about the lighting conditions in which I'm seeing the table. The same comments hold for Gretzky's famous zebra in the zoo case. All that I'm entitled to infer from the animals are zebras is that it is not the case both that the animals are mules and the animals are not cleverly disguised. Here comes the sentence. I cannot infer anything about whether the animals I'm observing are or are not disguised. Indeed, I can infer from what I know that it is not the case both that the animals are mules and Cincinnati is not the capital of Ohio. But of course, I didn't gain any knowledge about state capitals in this way. That would be too easy. So why does Kohn think that there's some ill-gotten gain here? Here is what he says. Suppose my son wants to buy a red table for his room. We go to the store and I say, The table is red. I'll buy it for you. Having inherited his father's obsessive personality, he worries, Daddy, what if it's white with red lights shining on it? I reply, don't worry. You see, it looks red, so it is red. So it's not white, but illuminated by red lights. Surely he should not be satisfied with this response. I agree. The son should not be satisfied with this response because what the son is challenging is not the move from the table is red to the table is not white being illuminated by a red light, but rather the son is challenging the move from the table looks red to the table is red. The son is questioning whether his father is entitled to move from a claim about how the table looks to a claim about how the table is. Hence, closure does not help explain why the inquisitive son should not be satisfied with the putative response. The issue isn't whether Cohn could offer to his son the table looks red as a reason for thinking the table is red, when what's up for grabs is whether how things look in the circumstance has any probative value concerning how things are in the circumstance. The issue is, or rather should be, whether the father could have come to know the real color of the table by reasoning from the table looks red to the table is red. And this case doesn't show, or even tend to show, that he couldn't. S comes to know P at T. Let's try and figure out what that means. S comes to know P at T just in case S did not know that P prior to T. P is true. S has located good enough reasons for believing that P, and S bases his belief on the S believes P on the basis of those reasons, and there are no genuine defeaters of the reasons on which S bases her belief that P. So the issue becomes this. Can S come to know the table is red simply by reasoning from the table looks red? Now I have about 2.5 more pages to read and I'm done. So let me repeat the question. Can S come to know the table is red by simply reasoning from the table looks red? I think that question is ambiguous. And once the ambiguity is exposed, the so-called problem of easy knowledge will dissolve. The question could mean this. Is the table looks red a good enough reason on some occasions for satisfying one of the necessary conditions for knowing the table is red, the justification condition? In our terminology, on some occasions, does the former make the latter propositionally justified? Or equivalently, on some occasions, does the belief the table looks red make the belief that the table is red doxastically justified? If those are the questions, then I think the answer to each is clearly yes. I take it that a mark of empirical knowledge is the justification condition can be satisfied by defeasible reasoning. Further, I take it as given the table looks red provides an adequate defeasible reason for the table is red, at least on some occasions. On what occasions? Occasions when the probative value of how things look is not up for grabs. The question could mean this. On the occasions when the table looks red, is a good enough reason for rendering the table is red propositionally justified, and S comes to know the table is red, does S's knowledge owe its existence only to that reasoning? If that's the question, then I think the answer is clearly no. We have said that knowledge is true belief based upon defeasible but undefeated reasoning. So if the lighting conditions are misleading, or if S's perceptual equipment is not working properly, then S would not have gained knowledge that the table is red, even if the belief is doxastically justified on that occasion. More generally, if the circumstance is not propitious for obtaining the truth, then evidence about how things look is defeated evidence. In other words, when reasoning is defeated by a proposition describing the infelicitous circumstance, the reasoning cannot produce knowledge. The crucial point is that knowledge does not arise merely on the basis of adequate, defeasible reasoning. It arises on the basis of such reasoning that is not defeated. Let me see. I'm going to skip a little bit here. I have agreed that we cannot come to know the table is red simply on the basis of its looking red, because more is required than merely possessing the reason that the table looks red for us to gain knowledge that the table is red. The table's looking red is a good, albeit defeasible reason for believing the table is red. We don't need additional reasons on those occasions when the reasoning is not defeated. But, and here's a crucial point, having a good, defeasible reason for believing the table is red is not sufficient for possessing or gaining knowledge that the table is red. The belief the table is red owes its status as knowledge to more than the mere possession of adequate, defeasible reasoning. The belief is doxastically justified on the basis of the inference, but it owes its status as knowledge to the fact that there are no defeaters of the justification of the proposition that the table is red. In other words, we can't come to know a true proposition solely on the basis of defeasible reasoning. Our knowledge also owes its status to the fact that there are no defeaters. Skip a little bit more. Let us, however, suppose the sun really does have a reason for thinking the appearances might be deceiving on this occasion. A proper response from the father would be to provide evidence which removes the son's doubts, and that is possible. For example, the father could point out that there are no red lights in the store. This case can be used to underscore the crucial disanalogy between ordinary incredulity, what the son was expressing, and global academic skepticism. Only in the former can there be reasons available, one, for thinking the alternative possibility obtains, and two, for adequately overriding that thought. By contrast, global academic scenarios are constructed so that no reasons for thinking they are true can be provided, and no reasons for removing the doubt can be provided. Last paragraph. The solution to global skepticism, or global skeptical worries, is quite different from the solution to ordinary incredulousness. In the latter case, the doubt can be removed by locating more evidence. In the former, global academic skepticism, careful reflection about the standard argument shows that it either begs the question or that it is impossible for the skeptical hypothesis to be true and for there to be evidence for its truth. Such hypotheses need not be ruled out. Thus, Hume was wrong to claim that inattention alone would provide relief from the global academic skepticism. Careful attention to the standard arguments can provide such a remedy. Thanks.